A trauma bond is an intense emotional attachment between a victim and their abuser. This bond is not formed out of love or respect but as a survival strategy in response to a repeated cycle of trauma and abuse followed by periods of reconciliation or reward. In essence, the victim becomes emotionally attached to the person causing them harm, due to the intermittent reinforcement of reward and punishment. The formation of a trauma bond is a complex and distressing process that occurs in a repeating cycle over time, typically within the confines of an abusive relationship. The first stage of the formation of a trauma bond cycle is marked by an incident of abuse. This abuse can take various forms, each with its unique brand of harm and control. Physical abuse involves any aggressive behavior that causes bodily harm. It could range from slapping, punching, or hitting to more severe forms like choking or burning. Physical abuse leaves visible scars, but the invisible emotional wounds it inflicts run far deeper, leaving the victim feeling vulnerable, fearful, and traumatized. Emotional abuse might not leave physical marks, but its impact on the victim's mental health is profound. Emotional abuse includes actions such as belittling, constant criticism, humiliation, and isolation. It chips away at the victim's self-esteem and self-worth over time, instilling in them feelings of worthlessness and fear. Psychological abuse, also known as mental abuse, involves behaviors that harm the victim's mental health or control their mental state. Tactics may include manipulation, gaslighting, making the victim question their reality, intimidation, or threats. This form of abuse leaves the victim confused, anxious, and living in constant fear of the abuser. In all these forms of abuse, the abuser exerts power and control, leaving the victim feeling helpless and trapped. This first step of the cycle is critical, as it sets the stage for the trauma bond to form. The victim, in their vulnerable state, becomes more susceptible to the abuser's manipulative tactics in the following stages of the cycle. After the storm of abuse comes the deceptive calm, the apology phase of the trauma bond cycle. This stage is a critical part of the trauma bonding process, as it serves to confuse the victim and further entrench the bond. In this phase, the abuser will display what seems like genuine remorse. They will apologize profusely and make heartfelt promises that they will change. Vows to seek help and go to therapy are also common during this phase. These gestures create an illusion of safety and hope, making the victim believe that their relationship can improve and that the abusive behavior would not recur. In addition to apologies, the abuser will shower the victim with affection during this phase. They will become exceptionally attentive, caring, and loving. They will also often present gifts as a tangible symbol of their remorse, further complicating the victim's emotions. This stark contrast from their abusive behavior confuses the victim, leading them to question whether the abusive incident was as severe as they initially thought. The apology phase is often referred to as the honeymoon phase of the trauma bond cycle, because of its semblance to the early, blissful stage of a relationship. The abuser is kind, loving, and regretful, lulling the victim into a false sense of security. However, this period of calm is temporary and serves only to perpetuate the cycle, setting the stage for the tension that inevitably follows. This constant oscillation between abuse and affection is what keeps the trauma bond intact, making it difficult for the victim to leave the abusive relationship. After the apology phase of the trauma bond cycle, there typically comes a period of misleading tranquility, which is basically the calm before the storm. This phase is ephemeral and marked by an insidious escalation of tension. As part of this phase, the abuser's behavior starts to change subtly. They become increasingly irritable, critical, or distant. Their mood swings become unpredictable, creating a stressful environment. The victim, who is now well versed with this pattern, finds themselves constantly on high alert, trying to prevent another episode of abuse. The abuser will start to lash out over minor irritations, further heightening the tension. In this phase, the abuser also begins to assert their power more openly in an attempt to control the victim's actions. This power play can manifest in various ways, such as unreasonable demands, controlling behavior, or even threats. This tension-building phase serves to intensify the fear and anxiety within the victim, making them feel even more trapped and powerless. It's a stark reminder that the cycle is far from over and that another abusive incident is imminent. This continuous cycle of calm and tension, affection and abuse, keeps the victim ensnared in the trauma bond. Despite the victim's diligent efforts to maintain peace, the trauma bond cycle cruelly turns again, leading to another incident of abuse. This marks the beginning of a new cycle, a relentless loop of harm and false hope. No matter how hard the victim tries to appease the abuser or avoid triggering situations, another abusive incident is almost inevitable. The repeated pattern of abuse and reconciliation shows the victim that their efforts to prevent the abuse are futile, further eroding their sense of self-worth and autonomy. Each new cycle of abuse intensifies the trauma experienced by the victim. The repeated incidents of abuse have a cumulative effect, each one adding to the emotional and psychological damage inflicted on the victim. This constant cycle of abuse leads to severe emotional distress, including symptoms of post-traumatic stress disorder or complex post-traumatic stress disorder. In this way, the cycle continues to perpetuate itself, with each round serving to deepen the trauma bond and further entrench the victim in the abusive relationship. This vicious cycle is not just a series of isolated incidents, but rather a systematic pattern of control and domination that has devastating long-term effects on the victim's mental and physical health. The insidious nature of this cycle makes it challenging to identify and even harder to break free from. However, understanding its intricacies is the first step towards recovery and healing. Despite the profound challenges that the trauma bond cycle presents, it's crucial to remember that recovery is possible. With the right support, victims can break free from this damaging cycle, rebuild their self-esteem, and regain control over their lives. Professional help, including therapy and counseling, can provide the tools necessary to navigate this difficult journey towards healing. In conclusion, the trauma bond cycle is a testament to the profound psychological impact of abusive relationships. It underlines the importance of early intervention, mental health support, and societal awareness to help victims escape this cycle and reclaim their lives. For more information about the impact of abuse, visit www.carlacorelli.com.